In the operating room, the lead surgeon was my wife, Victoria. She and male nurse Kyle left their posts for 40 minutes. The patient died. Afterward, she tearfully forced me to sign a medical accident waiver, saying it was our daughter. I looked at her and pushed the document back. It's not appropriate. The father of the deceased should sign it. She didn't know that the person on the operating table was Mr. Hayes' daughter, the heiress of the wealthiest man. Sign this. My wife, Victoria, threw the document onto my desk, her face full of impatience. I glanced at the document, which read medical waiver. 3 hours earlier, I had just finished my daughter's piano lesson and started tutoring Chloe, the daughter of the wealthiest man. Halfway through the lesson, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through the window, directly hitting Chloe's head. I quickly wrapped her in my jacket to smother the flames, pulled Chloe and ran outside, but the classroom door was tightly locked. I desperately pounded on the door until Chloe's bodyguard finally broke open the door from the outside and rushed the child to City General Hospital. By the time we reached the hospital, Chloe was already unconscious. The burns weren't very severe, but they were on her face. To prevent her from being hunted further, when I registered her, I used my daughter Lily's information, since the names were similar enough, and they were the same age. Snapping back to reality, I was puzzled when her male nurse, Kyle, spoke. Michael, my condolences. Victoria did her best. But your daughter didn't make it. He lowered his head, feigning sadness, his hands tightly clasped. I was stunned, and instinctively looked at Victoria. What happened? It was just a minor burn, wasn't it? Victoria sneered. Kyle immediately chimed in, his tone falsely sympathetic. Michael, you're a doctor's husband, so you're not unfamiliar with this profession, are you? There are always unexpected complications on the operating table. Besides, children are young, and the mortality rate is naturally higher for them. You can't blame Victoria for this. She must be hurting more than you. I frowned, looking at Victoria. My gaze seemed to irritate her. Victoria roughly shoved the waiver of liability in front of me. Stop talking nonsense. Michael, sign it now. Also, the cooling off period will be over tomorrow, and we're going straight to the countess office to get divorced at 8 in the morning. She paused, hugging Kyle tightly to provoke me. And I am going to sign the papers and marry Kyle tomorrow. Our daughter's funeral is a bad omen, so I won't be attending. With that, Victoria didn't even look at me, and walked away, holding Kyle. Lily, my daughter with Victoria, was an unplanned pregnancy. Victoria was in the middle of a promotion period then and didn't want the child. I also advised her to wait, but her body was a bit weak, and if she didn't have the child then, she might not have another chance later. In the end, she was forced to accept the child. She naturally missed out on that year's promotion. For all these years, Victoria had always felt that our daughter came at the wrong time, and she never showed affection for her. My gaze fell back on the medical waiver. My daughter's funeral. Due to insufficient care from the family, the patient died from postoperative complications. City General Hospital and the lead surgeon, Victoria, bear no responsibility. I read it word by word, finding it utterly absurd. The unsettling feeling in my heart grew stronger. I asked a friend to get me the surveillance footage from the operating room. The footage showed that Victoria and Kyle were both late. Chloe was already prepped for anesthesia when they casually strolled into the operating room. Victoria was the lead surgeon, and Kyle was the instrument assistant, but these two clearly weren't focused on the surgery. They were constantly exchanging glances. Eleanor began checking the patient's information, confirming the first surgery in operating 1 on June the 1st. Patient, Chloe, 5 years old, with minor facial burns sustained accidentally while attending piano lessons at the creative school. Victoria froze, frowning, staring at the child's blurred face on the operating table. Then, her eyes suddenly hardened, as if she had made a decision. Kyle smugly nudged Eleanor, gesturing for her to give up the spot next to Victoria. Eleanor already found Victoria unreliable, so she quietly moved aside. Not long after the surgery began, as Kyle handed over a vascular clamp, he absent-mindedly grabbed the wrong size. Eleanor immediately reminded him, "Kyle, that's the wrong one." To everyone's surprise, Kyle not only didn't admit his mistake, but rolled his eyes at the senior nurse. "Oh, what's done is done. Why are you so loud? You scared me. This is an operating table. It's a matter of life and death." And justifying handing over the wrong instrument. Kyle was so rebuked that he lost face. Victoria instantly became furious, violently clattering the surgical scalpel into the tray, and cursed loudly. pointing at the senior nurse's nose. "I am the lead surgeon, and I haven't said anything. Who are you to lecture me here?" After her outburst, Victoria grabbed Kyle, and the two stormed out of the operating room, leaving the heiress of the wealthiest man, midway through surgery, abandoned on the operating table. Suddenly, my heart tightened, and the hair on my neck stood on end. Victoria clearly knew that the person on the table was our biological daughter. The operating room immediately fell into chaos. A young nurse quickly chased after them, while Eleanor directed the others to continue the surgery, and reported the situation to her superiors. I fast-forwarded the footage. A full 40 minutes passed before Victoria and Kyle reappeared on screen. There wasn't a hint of urgency on their faces. Instead, they wore arrogant expressions, as if they had been begged multiple times to return. At that moment, the heart monitor's waveform grew weaker, until it flatlined with a sharp beep, and a piercing alarm blared throughout the operating room. Victoria dragged her feet to the operating table, and half-heartedly pressed on the patient's chest a few times, going through the motions. "All right, she can't be saved," from beginning to end. There wasn't a trace of guilt in her eyes. My fists clenched, and my stomach churned. Medical accidents and intentional murder are two completely different things. The next morning, I went to the Countess' office, and signed the divorce decree with Victoria. Victoria kept holding Kyle, being affectionate, and as soon as they signed the divorce decree, she started clamoring to sign the marriage certificate with Kyle. I didn't say another word, and drove straight back to City General Hospital. Patients were waiting. After finishing 2 surgeries, I had just stepped out of the operating room when Victoria blocked my path. "Michael, what exactly are you trying to do? Why didn't you sign that damn waiver of liability? You made the director chew me out. My bonus was completely withheld. Are you happy now?" "Victoria," I said, looking at her, my heart completely calm, "it's not appropriate for me to sign that waiver of liability, not appropriate for you. I think you did it on purpose. You want to ruin me. Surgeries always have risks. If he's so capable, why didn't you operate on your own daughter yourself?" "Surgical risks." I sneered. Was it surgical risk, or was it the lead surgeon taking a male assistant, and disappearing for 40 minutes in the middle of a surgery? "Do you want me to pull up the surveillance footage, and post it online so everyone can see your surgical risk? You really did it on purpose." She jumped. "Just because your daughter died on my operating table, you're retaliating against me. You want to ruin me. First, Victoria, we're divorced. I don't need to consult you about anything I do. Second, only the direct relatives of the deceased can sign a waiver of liability. I can't sign it. Are you insane?" She couldn't believe it. "Why can't you sign for your own daughter? You're the one who's insane." I stared into her foolish, angry eyes, pushing the waiver of liability in front of her. I paused, looking at her blank expression, and said, word by word, with a hint of malicious pleasure, "Victoria, you still haven't figured out what the name of the patient who died on your operating table yesterday was, have you?" Her name was Chloe, spelled with the character Zhang as in bow and long, and Qing as in easy. She was the heiress of the wealthiest man. Victoria froze for a moment, then, like a lit firecracker, her voice suddenly rose. "Michael, what are you talking about?" As if to prove herself, she pulled out her cell phone, and shoved it in front of me. "Look, this is the death registration list," she yelled. "Open your eyes and see who's on it." On the list, a name was roughly circled in red, particularly glaring. Lily. Lily, that was my daughter's name. The ID number was also hers. No mistake. How could this be? Just before tutoring the heiress of the wealthiest man, I had just taught my daughter a new song, and personally walked her home from the creative school. I made sure the door was properly closed before leaving with peace of mind. I knew my face must be pale and rigid, looking awful. Victoria caught my expression and misinterpreted my reaction. "Nothing to say now, huh? Michael, just to spite me, you're not even dealing with your daughter's funeral arrangements. The person is dead, and is still dragging this out. Do you have any conscience left?" Although I knew it was likely a mistake, I still nervously pulled out my cell phone, and dialed my daughter's smartwatch with calling feature. The receiver buzzed with the waiting tone, but no one picked up. Victoria stood opposite me, with a smirk, enjoying the show. "What are you still pretending about?" she sneered, her tone full of schadenfreude. "Hurry up and sign the waiver of liability, then go to the morgue to find your daughter's body. Ha ha ha." Victoria laughed loudly and left. I couldn't be bothered with her and dialed my daughter's phone repeatedly. Just as I was about to give up, planning to rush home to confirm, the call finally connected. Hello. A familiar voice came through. It was my daughter. In that instant, my taut nerves suddenly relaxed. I almost cried out, "Lily, why did you take so long to answer? You scared me to death. Where were you?" "I was looking for my coloring pens," my daughter complained on the other end. "Daddy, I think I lost my yellow and pink pen. Boo-hoo-hoo." I let out a long breath, leaning back in my chair, feeling all the strength drain from my body. Victoria returned, her face contorted fiercely as she confronted me, her voice cut through the air like a knife. "Michael, if you're going to lie, at least make it believable." She stared at me with a face full of mockery, her eyes holding a condescending superiority. I already asked around. The child who came in for surgery was just an ordinary kid, not some heiress of the wealthiest man at all. You don't even have your facts straight, and you dare to put on an act here. I looked at her face, contorted with smugness, but my heart was unusually calm. I knew she had completely fallen into the web of lies she had woven, but in the next second, a deep, cold voice came from behind us. What if she really is my daughter? Mr. Hayes stood at the end of the hallway, in a meticulously tailored black suit, his face devoid of expression, but his eyes seemed to pierce through people's souls. 2 bodyguards stood beside him, one on each side, their expressions solemn. The director followed closely, his face extremely grim. Victoria whirled around, frozen in place as if struck by lightning. Her lips trembled slightly, and her face instantly turned ashen. Mr. Hayes, please let me explain," she stammered, her voice almost trembling. "I truly didn't know it was your daughter. It was Michael." He registered the patient's name. It had my daughter's name on it. So as she spoke, she instinctively pointed at me, as if that would shift all the blame onto me. Mr. Hayes' gaze slowly shifted to me. I didn't speak, just stood quietly where I was. "You registered your daughter?" he asked. I nodded. "My daughter is named Lily, the Zhang as in standing early, and Qing as in clear water. She's 5 years old and was at piano lessons this afternoon. I personally walked her home and made sure the door was closed before leaving, and then I picked up Chloe, your daughter, for her tutoring session. The classroom was then attacked with a Molotov cocktail, and I took her to City General Hospital to protect her from being hunted further. I used Lily's name when registering her." Mr. Hayes was silent for a few seconds, then looked at the director. "Doctors at your hospital dare to perform surgery without even looking at the patient's name." The director's forehead beaded with sweat. He repeatedly bowed and nodded. "Mr. Hayes, this situation is indeed quite unusual. We will deal with it seriously. I won't comment on your hospital's medical standards," Mr. Hayes said coldly, "but my daughter died on your operating table. You must give me an explanation." The director nodded repeatedly, and the look he gave Victoria had changed. "Drive, Chen, do you have anything to say now?" Victoria was flustered and stammered, "Mr. Hayes, director, please let me explain. I truly thought the person on the operating table was my daughter. My daughter is also 5 years old, also takes piano lessons at the creative school, and her name sounds similar. Please believe me. I really thought," I sneered, "if Chen had known the patient was the heiress of the wealthiest man, she would have done her best to save her, right?" Everyone fell silent, staring at Victoria. I continued, "But at that time, you thought the patient was your own daughter, so you left midway, abandoning her without a second thought. Your intention was to kill your own biological daughter, wasn't it?" At my words, Victoria abruptly turned her head to look at me, her mouth half open, unable to utter a single word. Mr. Hayes watched her with cold eyes. "Yeah, doctor, even if she wasn't my daughter, but yours, or just an ordinary person, you should not have left in the middle of the surgery. I don't care what happened between you and your daughter. Your behavior of discriminating against patients makes you completely unfit to be a doctor." Then, Mr. Hayes turned to the director. "Is this the kind of doctor you have at your hospital? Kick this bad apple out, or else the whole bunch will be spoiled." The director had not initially intended to fire Victoria, as Victoria was a recognized expert in burn surgery, highly regarded in the field for her skills. He had originally planned to find an opportunity to plead with Mr. Hayes, but after hearing my account, he understood that Victoria's problem was no longer a surgical error. He knew Victoria's career was over. "Mr. Hayes, thanks to your sharp insight, otherwise, our hospital's reputation would have been ruined by her. Hearing the director's merciless words, Victoria's face instantly turned ashen. Mr. Hayes, director, I can explain. I left midway because the director's face was full of hesitation. Just as he was about to intercede with Mr. Hayes, Daniel, Eleanor, and others arrived. Seeing everyone's face was filled with resentment and anger. Victoria, how dare you try to explain? You and Kyle disappeared from the operating room midway through, and the young patient, who could have been saved, was practically killed by you. Several people spoke up, one after another, quickly recounting what had happened in the operating room. Mr. Hayes, director, we can testify that Victoria and Kyle deliberately abandoned their posts. This is intentional homicide. The director had initially wanted to protect Victoria, but it was impossible with everyone watching. He finally spoke, his voice tinged with helplessness and resolve. Victoria, Kyle, your positions have been revoked, and you will face an investigation. Both of them looked ashen, and were escorted out by the director's security guards. Kyle walked last, glaring at me angrily. Michael, don't you get cocky, just you wait. Victoria and I will be back within 3 days. I didn't take Kyle's words seriously at all. This time, Victoria was not only fired, but her medical license was also revoked. Even if she wanted to re-enter a hospital, she couldn't. Moreover, the suspicion of intentional homicide had not yet been cleared, and she was awaiting further investigation. What I didn't expect was, 3 days later, Victoria and Kyle actually returned. Both of them had their original positions reinstated. The director himself had personally invited them back. Daniel and Eleanor were furious, and tried to find the director for an explanation, but couldn't even get to see him. I received a message from Eleanor, and hurried to City General Hospital. As soon as I arrived, Victoria and Kyle appeared. Kyle saw me, and laughed disdainfully at me. Michael, you didn't see this coming, did you? Victoria and I are back. Not only are we not murderers, we've got our jobs back. Even with Mr. Hayes helping you, it's no good. Victoria hugged Kyle, and looked at me as if I were a fly. Victoria, what good is it that you gained favor with Mr. Hayes? With just a word from Kyle, let alone the director, even Mr. Hayes has to comply. I noticed Victoria's choice of words, and instantly understood that her return to the hospital was inseparable from Kyle. Kyle said smugly, Michael, if you kneel and bow to me, now, I'll forgive you for your previous disrespect. How about it? I retorted without hesitation. You tried to kill my daughter, but mistakenly killed someone else. I did nothing wrong, and I certainly won't apologize to you. Kyle scoffed, stubborn to the end. Do you believe that with just one word from me, I'll never be able to teach music again? I knew Kyle wasn't making idle threats. He managed to escape consequences after such a major incident, so I believed he had the power to blacklist me in the education field. But so what? Between Kyle and me, there was already a relentless vendetta. I looked coldly at Victoria. I have only one thought now. I won't let murderers get off easy. Hearing my words, the smile vanished from Victoria's face, and even Kyle stared intensely at me. I ignored them, and turned back to the nurse's station. Seeing me, Eleanor and the others, who had been waiting there, approached with grim faces. Michael, I didn't realize Kyle had such powerful connections. We can't afford to offend him anymore. She handed me her cell phone, gesturing for me to look. Reading the personal profile on the encyclopedia, I stood rooted to the spot. Stunned, I had considered Kyle's background to be impressive, but I never imagined it wasn't just impressive, it was absolutely top tier. His grandmother was a pioneer in the American community, and his entire family consisted of top-tier medical professionals, and the director of the elite university was William, Kyle's grandfather. What shocked me even more was Kyle's educational background. He wasn't even a medical professional. He studied painting. On the surface, he was a male nurse, but in reality, he had studied fine arts for 4 years, and even his thesis was plagiarized. In that instant, many things I hadn't understood before suddenly became clear. No wonder Victoria was with the ordinary-looking Kyle. She must have known his true identity all along. Suddenly, a deep sense of powerlessness washed over me. Kyle's connections were beyond my imagination. Could I still help Chloe get revenge against him and Victoria? I had thought I wouldn't get a chance for revenge, but I didn't expect Victoria and Kyle to be so self-destructive. One day, while Victoria was performing surgery, Kyle grabbed the wrong clamp and accidentally severed the patient's major artery. Due to excessive blood loss and a sudden exacerbation of the condition, The patient died on the operating table. This was supposed to be a minor surgery. The patient's family had heard that Victoria was skilled and pulled some strings to have her as the lead surgeon. Now, learning that the patient had died, the family couldn't accept it at all. A group of them blocked Victoria's office door, demanding an explanation. When I rushed over to watch the commotion, I happened to see the patient's family members, holding knives, blocking Victoria and Kyle at the door. In the crowd of onlookers, someone seized the opportunity to pull out their cell phone and livestream. The family member, with an agitated expression, waved the knife. Drive. Chen, you clearly said this was a minor surgery, so why did my father die? Tell me. Victoria swallowed hard, terrified of being cut by the knife in his hand. Please calm down and listen to me. All surgeries have risks. We didn't want this to happen, and we did our best. The family member's eyes were bloodshot. Lying. IVE asked others. This surgery should never cut a major artery. It's because of your mistake that my father died. And you terrible person. I'll kill you both and send you down to be buried with my father. Kyle was usually arrogant, but seeing a family member so desperate, he became scared. He hid behind Victoria, trembling, but still argued. It was fated for your father to suffer this misfortune. It has nothing to do with us. It would have been better if he hadn't said that. As soon as he did, the family member became even more agitated. Don't you have any decency? You killed my father and you still dare to argue. Watching the family member advance, waving the knife, Victoria and Kyle were forced to back away continuously. Just as I thought the two would be cut down on the spot, Kyle suddenly saw me in the crowd. He hastily raised a finger and pointed at me, saying to the family member, "Bro, it's because of him, before the surgery. He kept threatening and intimidating us, making us anxious and unfocused, which led to our operational error." Victoria nodded frantically, and also threw dirt at me. Yes, that's right, that's exactly how it is. It's all because of this man. Hearing both of them say that, the family member was skeptical for a moment but then believed them, turning to glare at me fiercely. You terrible person, you're the one who killed my father. Looking at their shameless faces, I felt sick to my stomach. I silently cursed Victoria and Kyle for their shamelessness, for using me as a shield against the knife, and began to explain. I wasn't even at this hospital that day. I was teaching piano. How could I have come to find you? As for why Mr. Hayes and I wanted you removed from your positions last time, you both know perfectly well. I turned to the crowd. This, Chen tried to harm her own biological daughter, mistook the identity, and killed an innocent child. This is a matter of life and death. How can there not be an explanation? The family member looked at me, then at Victoria and Kyle. All three of you are suspected of harming my father, so I'll send all of you down there. I'll kill him first, then you two despicable people. As he spoke, the family member came towards me, raising the knife. The onlookers around us, seeing this, scattered quickly like startled birds. I had nowhere to retreat. There was a wall behind me. Just as I thought I was doomed, a patient in a wheelchair was helped over. Sir, please don't be impulsive. I can testify that this young man is definitely innocent. Victoria and Kyle are the real villains. Hearing this, the agitated family member calmed down. The patient in the wheelchair removed his hat and mask, revealing a twitching face. I suffered accidental burns last week, and scheduled an appointment with Drive. Chen. Everything went smoothly beforehand, but after the surgery, my facial features were distorted, constantly twitching. I went to another hospital for an examination, and only then understood that my facial nerve had been accidentally damaged during the surgery, but my surgical procedure shouldn't have had this risk. I tried to confront Victoria, but she refused to see me. I was desperate, and had no choice but to come here every day to find her, and I still have to find time for corrective surgery. Everyone, look at my face. This is proof enough that Victoria is a quack doctor, who has harmed countless people. Just then, several more people stepped forward. I can also testify. I personally saw Drive, Chen operating on this elderly gentleman that day. I saw it too. The ones operating on your father were this man and woman. I also heard them talking. It was this male nurse, who grabbed the wrong clamp and severed your father's major artery. There are very few male nurses, and I remember it clearly. There's no mistake. Kyle didn't expect that besides those in the operating room, others also knew he was the one who severed the major artery. He blurted out subconsciously, I didn't do it on purpose. The patient didn't move away. The family member was still hesitating, but hearing that, He completely believed it. He gritted his teeth, looking at Kyle. My father was under general anesthesia. How was he supposed to move away? You terrible person. You killed my father and you still want to frame others. As he finished speaking, the family member rushed forward, grabbed Kyle, and stabbed him multiple times. Kyle's blood splattered onto Victoria's face. Victoria screamed, turned, and tried to run, but she was quickly caught by the family member, who slashed her back repeatedly with the knife. It's unclear how much time passed before the family member was finally subdued by the arriving police. Fortunately, they arrived in time. Victoria and Kyle both survived. Still clinging to life, after this incident was live-streamed online, it quickly ignited social media. In the video, Victoria lay on the ground, blood continuously gushing from her arm, her face as pale as paper, her eyes filled with shock and pain. Kyle clutched his face, the blood seeping through his fingers making him look like a ghost from hell. The entire scene was extremely gruesome, like a real-life nightmare. As soon as the livestream went out, public outcry immediately boiled over. Netizens quickly shared and commented, showing support for them, condemning the perpetrators' violent behavior. Doctors dedicate themselves to saving lives, yet they are treated like this. It's simply outrageous. It's too cruel. This isn't a doctor-patient dispute. It's clearly premeditated murder. All kinds of indignant voices rose one after another on the internet. Soon, observant netizens began digging for information behind the incident. They scoured the hospital's official website and academic documents, and even dug up Kyle's personal history. At first, there were only a few scattered voices of doubt. This isn't from a medical background, is he? How can he be a postdoctoral researcher? He completed an 8-year degree in 4 years. Is there something fishy going on? However, these questions quickly escalated into nationwide outrage in less than an hour. It turned out that Kyle's undergraduate major was fine arts, and he had never taken any medical courses. His doctoral degree was not obtained through legitimate channels. Instead, it was a special approval project arranged for him by his grandfather, William, a renowned professor who had once served as the director of the University Medical Center, who pulled strings. What was even more shocking was that he obtained his doctorate within just a few years, and successfully began working at the hospital. As soon as this news broke, the tide of public opinion online completely reversed. People who had initially sympathized with Victoria and Kyle began to feel deceived, even fearful. If I get sick, and a doctor like this treats me, wouldn't I be going to my death? These people who pulled strings to get in don't even understand medicine. How can they treat patients? As emotions escalated, angry netizens turned their attention to the entire University Medical Center. Some organized online petitions demanding a thorough investigation. Some even stormed directly to the entrance of the University Medical Center, displaying banners and shouting slogans, demanding an explanation from the school authorities. The scene became chaotic at one point, and the police had to intervene to maintain order. Under immense public outcry, the University Medical Center had to convene an emergency meeting. Ultimately, William, Kyle's grandfather, being implicated and unable to face public accusations, voluntarily resigned from his position as director. Concurrently, Kyle and Victoria were also found to have serious issues with their professional qualifications, and both had their medical licenses revoked and were dismissed from their respective hospitals. This series of blows was undoubtedly adding insult to injury for Victoria, who was already physically and mentally exhausted. She lay in the hospital bed, her eyes lifeless, muttering to herself, "I just wanted to save lives." Before she could finish, she closed her eyes forever, her face still etched with resentment and grievance. Having died with regret, although survived, his face was severely disfigured, his left eye almost blind, and his right cheek covered in grotesque scars. He couldn't accept the fact that he had transformed overnight from a highly acclaimed genius doctor into a public enemy. Mentally broken, after learning of Victoria's death, he suddenly burst into uncontrollable laughter, then fell into a state of madness, and was sent to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. Unfortunately, the truth came too late, and the damage was already done. Witnessing their fates firsthand, the resentment in my heart dissipated. My daughter was waiting for me at home. I bought a fish. Today, I would make her favorite sweet and sour salmon.